All right, we're going to get started at 2 after the hour. My name is Lexi McCarthy. I'm so grateful that you've chosen to be with us here tonight for SibFest. We're excited to be partnering with the Westchester University Writing Center on how to approach writing your college essay. We have 3 great student leaders here that are going to be a part of the program as well. So I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Irvin, who's the director of the Writing Center. Enjoy.
All right. So I'm going to just hopefully have us on a view where you can see our faces a little bit better. We will do some work with slides, showing you some slides. My name's Margaret Irvin, and I'm the director of the Writing Center. The Writing Center is a free service at Westchester University where you can drop in and get help on writing at any stage. And it really is drop in. You can sign up the same day, or sometimes if we get really busy, you might need to wait a couple days, but it's really just in time help for your writing. And I've got 3 tutors here with me today. We do a lot of work with students on the type of writing that goes into creating a college essay. We do a lot of personal statements with students later in their career. When you graduate, there's always going to be a new personal statement to write. It's a really common format for any kind of application for jobs eventually. And so writing your first college essay is just a step in a long line of other essays like that. And I'm going to start out by introducing Hannah Weissman. You want to say a little bit about yourself and say hello?
Hi there, my name is Hannah. I'm a junior here at Westchester University, and I'm majoring in English education at the secondary level. So I've been part of the Writing Center for this one semester, but I first got involved through the freshman writing program. I found out that they were looking for mentors for freshman writers, so I ended up signing up, and I luckily got hired. And now this is my first semester at the actual Writing Center, which is really exciting. And I graduated high school back in 2017. So I wrote my college paper not that long ago. So I'm similar in terms of age at that sense. I've been there, really been there.
And next I'll introduce Kat Beauvais.
Hi, I'm Kat. I'm a sophomore. I'm an English writing major, and this is also my first semester tutoring in the Writing Center. But I also did do the mentorship program, mentoring English for freshmen last semester. And yeah, and I graduated in 2019 from high school. So it hasn't been that long since I wrote it, but it feels like a long time ago now.
Imagine how long ago it feels for me. So also a little bit about me, that I have a senior in college. So I am a mom. So hello, moms out there. I feel your pain, at least as far as trying to get through the essay. It's a challenge. And I'd also like to introduce Brittany Howard.
Hi guys, my name's Brittany. I recently graduated with my MA in English this past December from Westchester. And now I'm in my first semester of my second master's in early childhood education, and I'll graduate next spring. I started working at the Writing Center because I love English, as I mentioned previously, and I just graduated with my master's in English. So one of the classes that I took focused specifically on how to tutor with Dr. Irvin. But ultimately, when the class came to an end, I decided the Writing Center would be a great place to work for 2 reasons. I had to strengthen my English skills, and I got to have in-depth conversations about writing and English. I graduated high school in 2014, so although it may seem like a long time ago, I have great tips for you guys.
Great. Okay. So, well, we had some time to brainstorm together as a team and think about what the writing process is for doing your college essay. And we decided to go off the beaten track a little bit in terms of what we think the process is. And so I think I'm going to do the slideshow share on this, but we're going to go through what we see as the steps that you go through in the process of creating your college essay. Sorry, there's our intro. So step 1, we're going to call this the list. So we'll explain to you what the list is. So that's your first step in writing your essay.
Yeah, so I would say making a list is super important. You just jot down ideas. It doesn't even have to be a full, super impressive, crazy list. I know when I was making mine, I was kind of at first like, oh, what do I put down? I wasn't like the president of like a club or anything. So sometimes even small things like a really good score that you worked super hard for, or a moment or an event that you had to really persevere through, that could be something that goes on your list.
Yeah, and I also think for this list, just don't think too hard about it. Put things that you care about and that you think you did well, like Hannah was saying. And also, this can be sort of like a word vomit type of thing, too. Just put anything you're thinking, any thoughts you might think, like, this could be good for an essay, but I'm really not sure. Or I remember this that I was really passionate about in high school. Any of those things can go on that list, and even just having conversations with people can also help you write this list. And just it's just brainstorming, so don't think too hard. If it's really short, that's totally fine. If it's really really long, that's totally fine. So just don't sweat it. This is just like the very beginning step of what you're doing.
It's like, as we know, every person has faced the dilemma of looking at a blank computer screen without having any idea how to translate their thoughts into coherent and carefully articulated essay. But personally, I utilize the list a lot. Like, in other words, it's pre-writing. So the purpose of this is to find and explore some ideas like you could potentially write about. There's so many things like Hannah and Kat mentioned. You could really write down your ideas in order, which they happen to you, so you can map your life in a formal linear way, or you can do it in a sporadic list of ideas and phrases. It's up to you.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the main thing is to keep it from being super intimidating. So if you start with this idea that you have to look at a resume, the resume itself, creating a resume, is intimidating. So just think of it as jotting things down in list form, anything that you've accomplished. And I think all of those tips were great, that it's about you and what really has happened in your life. It doesn't have to be the most impressive thing. And especially because of COVID, we've been stuck indoors a lot. And it's probably the case that there might be some disappointments of things that you wanted to have on your list, but aren't on your list. But trust yourself that everything that's been happening to you is worthy, and it is you and your life. So the second thing on this step is step 2 could possibly be conquering fear. Conquering the fear of getting into college and the fear of writing this essay. And it feels like a lot's riding on it because perhaps you do not have the test scores that you might have had. And it might feel that this essay counts for a lot more, or you may have been told that. So I think our team has some suggestions about conquering fear.
So from my experience and just like my personal expertise in writing, I know I was super freaked out by the college essay, just that word within itself. That's just a lot to me, especially as a high schooler when I was writing it. So like I remember writing mine and just like hysterically crying the entire time and being like, oh my God, I'm growing up and I have to write an essay about it. Like, what do I write? From my experience, and obviously this does not apply to everyone in the sense that maybe this isn't the way you go down, and that's totally cool. But I like to use fear as like a motivator. So using that kind of maybe a little bit of like fear, a little bit of dread writing, kind of using that as a way to move myself forward in the writing process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think another good thing to think about if you're really scared about writing it, because I also was very nervous about this essay, put a lot of pressure on it, is this is not the only thing that they're looking at. Like, you are a whole person, you have test scores, you have the accomplishments that you get to list out in other parts of your application. You have so many other things. It's not just like, this is my essay and this is all I have. Also, just it doesn't matter as much as you think it does. It can, like, it is a big thing, but looking back at it now, I'm like, I just wish I didn't stress about that. So just try to let the stress go and you will write a lot better. And it will be a lot easier for you. Mm-hmm. And also just talk to other people, try to like put it into perspective. If you have like an older sibling who already did this, maybe you can ask them about writing their essay and it'll make you feel a lot better.
Something I do if I'm scared of something, I remember writing my essay and I was horrified. So I remember doing the easiest part first. Like sometimes you have to gradually get into it. Like a journey is 1,000 miles, but it begins with a single step. The easiest part you could do is just do the title and your name, like, and then you do the beginning, and then you do the middle. You just follow yourself through. And something else you can do, you can write in a new location or use a different method. Like when I'm super stuck, I move from my laptop to paper, and it just a change of procedure gives you a new perspective sometimes.
Yeah, so all of those are great suggestions. And also knowing, I think one of the things that I liked here was this idea of fear is there's a certain amount of energy. It's not a really great feeling when you're feeling overwhelmed, nervous, afraid, but it comes out of energy. And I thought that what Hannah said about kind of transforming that and knowing that could just be a motivator, just the energy itself. And then once we get past that and get started, sometimes there's the issue of writer's block. And each of the tutors in the Writing Center works with writers all the time who are coming in feeling blocked and just getting started on a project or unsure how to finish once they've started. And so each of our tutors today has some suggestions for getting past writer's block.
Yeah, so in terms of writer's block, when students come to me and they're saying like, oh, I have no idea where to go, I have a somewhat topic or a somewhat idea, my go-to technique or method is, as Kat mentioned earlier, actually, the word vomit, where you just kind of write whatever you want. And it does not have to look good or sound good or be pretty or anything like that. Just blank ideas in general can help you generate ideas for the paper later on. And you can always go back and rearrange things and dissect things and expand.
Yeah, another way to do that word vomit, you can also obviously do it on the page and do it in your list. So I would also rely on your list during this like writer's block portion, but also you can do it in conversations. So like sit down with a parent or a friend or whoever and just like talk about your experience, just talk about what you're thinking about, and you might come up with a lot of ideas that way. Also, another thing is write a lot of drafts if you need to. Write a response to a few of the questions, like the Common App questions or anything like that, and then pick which ones you like after that. And you might have to write multiple versions, but if you can like not put as much pressure on each version, it might actually be easier to do it that way. And just come up with more ideas as you keep going. So I think, yeah, conversations and just taking off that pressure, writing as much as you can, and then later you can go back and obviously fix it.
Okay, yeah, like Hannah and Kat said, writer's block is sometimes caused by excessive harsh self-criticism, a lack of external motivation, or a lack of internal motivation. A lot of people get stuck on the idea that what they write has to be perfect. The pressure of that keeps them from writing anything down at all. So just give yourself some leeway to write whatever you want on whatever topic you want to write about, even if it's grammatically incorrect or irrelevant. Just writing something down can often give the mind something to work with, and it can often lead to further inspiration. I usually pose like a few questions, like things like, what do you believe? What do I value? What makes me laugh? What comforts me? Who are my superheroes? Like, and while these questions might not be immediately relevant to the college essay, you're trying to write their introspective questions. So the more you think about the answers to these questions, the more you're reflecting on yourself and your goals.
And that brings us perfect segue to the next step, which is getting feedback. So even on the things that you may have, as we've been saying, just, vomit it out, like it's not perfect and you knew going in it wasn't perfect, or you were just maybe even writing answers to silly prompts, or actually writing answers to the prompts on the Common App, which we'll go over what those prompts are in a bit. But you need feedback, and you might be getting that feedback from sources you wouldn't have thought of. Go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah. So I feel like for feedback, oftentimes people, especially at the high school level, don't necessarily have the resource of like a writing center like the university does. So feedback is so important. you don't need somebody who is like an expert in the field to look at your paper to get good feedback. If you can just give it to a friend, a classmate, an acquaintance, if you have your parents at home, if you have a sibling at home, having just another perspective and an extra set of eyes on your work will help immensely. And just hearing what they have to say, if it's something as simple as like, this part doesn't make sense to me, or I really like this part, that can be really helpful in the long term for your paper.
Yeah, I think we all are going to say sort of the same thing as Hannah, whereas like it doesn't matter who looks at it as long as somebody looks at it for you. So it could be a friend who like doesn't even like English, doesn't matter, go to them. But what I did when I was writing mine was I actually like had closer relationships with a few of my teachers, so I gave it to them. Like if you have an English teacher, especially, you don't even have to really be close to them to ask them to look at your essay, and they will probably be inclined to look at it. And also, a guidance counselor is a great resource. So even if you don't know your guidance counselor, they are great because they've seen so many college essays. They know what the College Board is kind of doing. So, and they're not going to say no to you if you say like, hey, can you look at my college essay and give me some feedback on it? So yeah, any feedback you can get, as she said, even if someone just says, I like it, I don't like it, this part is confusing, any of that, it's all helpful. So if you have like your parents or siblings, great. If you have a teacher, great, but just literally anybody to look at it.
Okay, yes, I agree. But something else to offer. It's easy for someone to say, yeah, like this is good. But honestly, it's important to know what's good about it. So when receiving feedback on your work, it's important to have specific questions and areas you want the reader to focus on. Like, what are some things I did well? What are some things I could have did differently? What are some things I could have did better? So it doesn't really, so never just walk in and be like, this is my paper, read it. Have some pointers so they know where they're focusing. So it will help you in the long run.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And getting multiple pairs of eyes on something is helpful too. And you can expect, though, that when you do that, and you might be asking your guidance counselor for some feedback, asking a parent for feedback, asking a sibling for feedback, you're probably going to come in and say, well, like Brittany just suggested, what do you think of this introduction? And you might get 3 different responses to that, and they might be contradictory. So you really have to trust yourself too when it comes to feedback, and take the feedback you think is the best and get lots of it so that you have some points of comparison. We're going to go into revising. We're going to go into that through looking at some sample essays, 2 sample essays. And before we do that, before we get into looking at revising and the sample essays, let's take a look at the prompts for this year's Common Application. So there are 7 of them. And if you notice, these are in small font, so I'm sorry about that, but they're easy to find by Googling the prompts for the Common App. And I just want to point out that prompt number 7 says, share an essay on any topic of your choice. It can be one you've already written, one that responds to a different prompt, or one of your own design. So meaning you could even pick an essay that you wrote previously for an English class, something that you did really well on and you thought was strong, just making sure that you keep it somewhere around 600 to 700 words at the most. You don't want it to be a very long essay. In this year's Common App, one of the questions that they added question number 4. I think other than that, the question stayed the same. But the question says, reflect on something that someone has done for you that has made you happy or thankful in a surprising way. And how has that gratitude affected or motivated you? So that's nice. You know, that's a really simple prompt. It's very personal. It doesn't ask you to talk about, you know, a mission trip you made to another country, which wouldn't have been possible anyway under COVID, but just the small things in life. So I think that even the people who run the Common Application are aware of what's been going on with COVID and how our lives have become perhaps a little bit simplified since then. But we're going to take a look. I need to stop sharing this for a moment and share something different. But we're going to take a look at 2 essays and actually read them. and get some critique from Hannah and Kat and Brittany on those essays and some feedback from them about the strengths and weaknesses of them. Okay, actually, sorry, I shared the wrong one. Sometimes these little glitches happen. Oh. All right, I seem to have a problem here. So I'm really sorry about the technical difficulties. All right, is this essay showing or no? So it's the writing sample from the college essay guy?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, finally. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so one thing I want to point out, it's 656 words. So that's around what you're going for, even though you could do a longer essay. It doesn't limit you to something that short, but this is a good length because the people who are reading the essays have so many to read, and it needs to be really an attention grabber. So I'm going to go ahead and read this essay with probably some help when I get to the Spanish, because I don't speak Spanish at all. And there is a little bit of Spanish in it. So, are you tired of seeing an iPhone everywhere? Samsung glitchy? It's time for a change. I present you the iTailor. I am the iTailor. On the outside, I look like any smartphone. But when you open my settings and explore my abilities, you will find I have many unique features. The iTailor's best feature is its built-in optimism. Thanks to my positivity, I was chosen to give the morning announcements freshman year. Now I am the alarm clock for the 1,428 students of Fox Lane High School. For the past 3 years, I have been starting everyone's morning with a bubbly, "Good morning, Foxes," and ending with, "Have a marvelous Monday, terrific Tuesday, or phenomenal Friday." My adjective a day keeps people listening, gives me conversation starters with faculty, and solicits fun suggestions from my friends. Next up, language settings. I've worked hard to be bilingual so the iTailor can be set to either English or Spanish. Fun fact, in middle school, I set my phone to Spanish so that messages like "Alexis, te envío en mensaje" and Instagram would increase my fluency. I learned nuances of the language by watching Spanish sitcoms like Siete Vidas and Spanish movies like Como Agua para Chocolate. I appreciate the emphasis Spanish culture places on relationships, the way siblings take care of each other, and how grandparents' wisdom is valued. Inspired, I began creating family events and even making efforts to grow closer to my second cousins. At 8 years old, I was diagnosed with what some might call a glitch, epilepsy. Fortunately, a new iOS software update cured my condition by the age of 15, but through epilepsy, I gained a love of exploration. Whereas at 10, I couldn't bathe without supervision, I now enjoy snorkeling in unknown waters. While at 11, I couldn't be left alone with my friends, I now explore the subways, crowded streets, and Broadway shows of New York City. Overcoming epilepsy taught me to take risks and explore new places. This brings us to the iTailor location settings. 2 summers ago, I traveled to Ecuador to live with a friend's family and teach Spanish theater to 3rd graders. The experience implanted a cookie in me, filling me with a desire to learn about different cultures. I brought this desire home to a volunteer position at a local program for immigrant children. I helped the kids make presentations about their places of origin, including Mexico, Guatemala, and Honduras. Also, as resident tour guide and ambassador for exchange students at my school, I've discovered North African fusion music from Salima, learned German slang from Enrique, and helped Saidamar prepare his Mr. Sulu campaign, a regional pageant in the Philippines. It became clear that the English language, one I took for granted, is the central feature that brings groups together. This past summer, I brought my talents to Scotland, playing the dual role of artistic director and leading character for Geek the Musical. I worked to promote the show in the Edinburgh Fringe Festival against 53,232 shows, reinventing ways to motivate the cast and connect with strangers from all over the world. We learned the more we connected, the more our audience grew. I applied these skills to my leadership positions at home, including my high school theater group, Players. I'm now better at creating a marketing strategy that includes door-to-door sales, print advertising, and identifying broader target audiences to fill seats. The rollout plan for the iTailer is to introduce it to the theater market. My goal is to use performance and storytelling to expose audiences to different cultures, religions, and points of view. Perhaps if we all learned more about each other's lifestyles, the world would be more empathetic and integrated. So, what do you think? Would you like an iTailer of your own? The iTailer College Edition is now available for pre-order. It delivers next fall. All right. So, thoughts from the team?
Yeah, I'll go first. So I think this is a really, really great essay and a great one to show. It's very unique. And what I think is most successful about it is the fact that she really sells herself to readers. She really lets them know what her strengths are, what she's done, what she's accomplished, and what she is passionate about. So those are my pros.
Okay.
I love how passionate it was. That was my favorite part. It was really passionate and it had wonderful transitions. It was a great style. It was a resume style. Like she put all of her interest in everything she did into one essay, which was really interesting to read. But, yeah.
Yeah, sort of like the list. The whole list made it in.
Yeah. She figured out a way.
It was very interesting and definitely had that like attention grabbing part of it so that like whoever's reading it would not like get bored. I feel like they would definitely remember her essay a little more than most others if they're looking through like essays all day. And it was just really well written, honestly, like good transitions and everything like that. Those are the pros.
Right. And so what are some of the things that struck you that might have been, let's not say weaknesses, but maybe things that could have, if you were giving feedback and this hadn't been handed in yet, what feedback you might give?
So feedback for this one is the only thing I would say is she sounds very privileged and does not acknowledge that anywhere in the essay. It is nice to put a little bit if you do have a lot of things like that, like she went on a lot of trips, got to do all of these things, to just acknowledge that part and try to sound humble in at least like one aspect. But the biggest like negative for this would be like more for everybody else. Like I think the essay was great. It's just don't like for everyone else like listening to this essay, just don't be intimidated by it. Yours does not have to sound like this. It does not have to have all of those accomplishments. You could have picked one of those things and written an essay about that. So just don't think like, oh, I didn't do like all of those like cool things. I didn't go to these cool places and I don't have this like great idea of like an iTailer. Like you can do it without any of that stuff and it can still be a great essay. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. So this is the type of essay that you might find, it was a sample from the web. And so when you go online and you look for sample essays, you're going to tend to see this kind of thing. And I think it's important, like Kat said, not to be intimidated by that because, you know, your experience is valid, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be, you know, this incredible resume where you put everything from this incredible list into an essay. It could be quite personal. So we're going to take a look at another example and one that is a little bit rougher. It's more at a rough draft stage. It's not something from the internet. It's an actual rough draft. So I'm going to do a share screen on another one. All right. So this is a first draft and it's 662 words and it has a title, There's No Such Thing as Normal. Being gay is the best and it's the worst. Best because it provides me with a different perspective on the world and introduced me to the amazing LGBT community full of kind and loving people. Worst because it creates a barrier between me and my straight friends who can't relate to difficulties I face because I'm gay, and because it subjects me to the evils of hate and homophobia, even hate and homophobia that seeps into the LGBT community that's supposed to love and support one another. When I was a sophomore, a gay friend of mine casually said, gay men are the most attractive people and lesbians are the least. I don't know what his sources were, but they aren't very credible. Just look up images of Ellen Page. I didn't agree with him, but what he said still sunk in. I found myself resenting other lesbians, especially butch lesbians. I blamed them for giving me a bad reputation. I even judged myself and my body, not wanting to be like them. I'm not the only person in the LGBT community who internalizes homophobia. The community rallies around the word pride, but at the same time tolerates a lot of internalized hate. Too often, those who fit a gay stereotype, such as flamboyant gay men or butch lesbians, get hate from others in our community because of the fear of giving straight people a reason to hate us. The actual reason for hate, both hate from outside and internalized hate, is the fear of not being normal. Being normal, being an insider, and being in the majority is something we all learn to strive for from a young age, no matter our sexuality. When I was in elementary school, I used to wear boy clothes because they made me comfortable. I was made fun of, so I changed to be more like the other girls. I started wearing makeup, I pierced my ears, and wore jewelry. I not only wanted to change how I looked, I also wanted to change my sexuality. I believed normal marriage was only between a man and a woman because it was the only love I saw in books and movies and on television. If I had been asked as a kid if I wanted to be straight instead of gay, I would have said yes. Many other LGBT members would say the same. The solution to this problem can't be given in a few sentences in this essay, but the best place to start would be getting rid of the idea of normal, starting with the messages we give children. We need to stop saying, don't worry, it's normal, you're normal, that's normal. Wanting to be normal makes us all try to be the same. And what makes the world so beautiful are its differences. Young children are the place to start because they are accepting of differences. The ways of the world have not been beaten into them yet. Around 5th grade, children start to get vicious toward each other about conforming to norms. By then, it's too late. This is one of the reasons I want to be a pediatrician who works with young children. I want to eliminate the word normal from use in medicine and replace it with words like healthy and what I often see. Most pediatricians focus on physical health, but mental health is just as important, and words are powerful. Doctors have power to influence children and parents. As a pediatrician, I will not use the word normal, not even when I talk about kids' growth, height, and weight. I will ask about bullying at school and what kids watch on TV. I will tell them it's okay to wear whatever makes them comfortable. I will tell them it's okay to be gay. I will tell them, honestly, there is no normal. All right. So what's the sense of this one? A little different.
Yeah, so personally, I really like this one. I like how authentic it is. It's very personal. And I like how this individual takes one like really big concept in their life and is able to connect that throughout every aspect of like what they want to do with their life in terms of education, how it affected them as a child, how they perceive the world today. So I thought that was great.
Yeah, this one is really like passionate. You can tell they really care about what they're saying. And it's also strictly like about them, which is nice, like a personal detail about them. I also like how they structured it where the end, they come back to that idea, but they are talking about what they want to do with it in the future. And I think their conclusion is really, really strong.
I like this because also the passion. This was a great topic and a great thing to talk about. And it feels like it was really important. I liked it because college essays tend to be very formal. So this one was a little less formal, which I liked. What else did I like? I like the conclusion as well, like Kat said. But yeah, I thought this was a really strong piece. I liked it.
Okay. And in the feedback category, since this is a draft, what feedback would you be giving to the writer?
So my number one feedback would be just making things a little more cohesive, tightening those sentences down, and just kind of making it a little bit sharper in some areas. I think oftentimes when people write their essays, sometimes they tend to forget that these colleges are getting flooded with essays at this point, and they have stacks upon stacks of essays to read. So you really got to make yours impactful but short, because I feel like oftentimes, especially like in high school education, you're kind of taught to think that longer is better, but that's not necessarily true.
Yeah,
Good advice.
I think this one just needs like a look through in like the editing department. So someone to just edit it for them, look through it with them. And as she said, just like make some of the sentence more cohesive. And just like Hannah was saying again, like make it concise while still like staying interesting, because we don't want to lose that passion she has, but still make it like concise and a little bit worded a little bit better, just editing wise.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
All right. I think that's definitely the consensus. So let's go back and take a look at it and actually go in and make some suggestions about how to rework the sentences, because I think in looking at one sample, this might be helpful to those who are working on editing now. Like, how would we go about, especially this first paragraph, because so I'm going to be the English teacher here and say, what I see here is two really long sentence fragments. So they're both sentence fragments and also really long. So both the sentence that begins with best because it provides me is really a fragment, but it's also a long sentence at the same time. And the sentence that begins worst because is also a fragment, but it kind of goes on for a while there. It's 4 lines long. So we have some grammar issues to contend with. Now, this isn't to say that you can't sometimes use a sentence fragment for emphasis, but usually sentence fragments that are good are short, not 4 lines long. So where would you start, Brittany? What would be your first suggestion if this person were coming to the writing center?
Well, the last line is very long, so I cut that. And because, just cut that and just say, this subjects me to.
Okay. Okay, so you'd put a period here for now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so how does that read? This subjects me to the evils of hate and homophobia, even hate and homophobia that seeps into the LGBT community that's supposed to love and support one another. All right, so that's a little bit stronger and it is a full sentence. All right, so Hannah or Kat, do you have other suggestions? Because we still have these 2 fragments here, best because and worst because.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for those, I would honestly just start with like deleting that part. So for the first sentence, you could just say, it provides me with, just deleting the best because. Everything in that sentence, pretty much you can tell as the reader that those are the best parts. So you don't really need to say that. And then that makes it sound a lot better. And then for the second one, you could do the same thing, or you could also add some sort of transition if you wanted. So you could just delete it and say it creates a barrier. Or you could say, with all of these great things, there comes some sort of transition there. But either way, I think would work there.
Okay. Or something like,
despite, these like. Or you could say it also creates a barrier.
Something like that.
Yeah.
All right, and then I know we've debated this sentence a lot. There's something about it. It's a attention getting, but maybe not in the best way. It's a little bit jarring.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, this like we were saying that like it feels, while I like what she's saying and that it's like a shock factor that we were saying like you want to kind of go for like to make it interesting. It does feel like maybe too informal, we were saying, or just feels like a little bit like off or maybe awkward to say it like that. So some way to like keep that sentiment but like word it differently, I think would be the best.
yeah, it seems like it's a little bit of a play on it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. So there's a little bit of like literary allusion in there. So I don't know. I think that's a sentence that the person getting feedback might get good feedback from me. I would probably say, you know what, leave it. Maybe you're working with allusion there. But then others might say that it should be changed. So it would really be up to the writer. It's your essay. So whoever the writer is here would need to really take charge and just decide, like, go with your gut, go with go with what you think is the best. So we also have some share of a technique that Brittany really likes called reverse outlining. Could you tell us a little bit about that? That's a good technique to use when you have a draft and you're in the revision process.
Okay, well, when you're in the revision process, you can go through each paragraph to make sure you don't have too many ideas in the paragraph. So it's basically just like an outline that you go through and you're picking out everything that's important in each paragraph, and making sure like you're not talking about too much and you're focusing in on one thing specifically.
All right. Okay, so is this showing up okay? Or no, it's not, is it? It's not showing up. All right, let's try again. All right, so does this draft show up for you? Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is what Brittany is describing. So I'm creating, if you look over on the right-hand side, you have basically an outline using the comment function in Microsoft Word, and some comments that came out as I was going through and doing this reverse outline, where I simply describe what's happening in each paragraph. So one thing that came out was I decided that there's this tension here between giving detail and being general. So let's see how that pans out as we go through. So the first paragraph, my comment would be, this introduction gives me the expectation that you'll be talking about the problem of homophobia. So that is good because that's accurate and that is what this essay is about. So that's good. This paragraph says that you have personal experience of experiencing, a little repetition there, internalized homophobia. There's your individual experience, and then there's a generalization about our community. So I guess out of the authority of being a member of the gay community, the writer has made some generalizations. And sometimes generalizations aren't as strong as specific, so that's something to keep in mind. The next paragraph transitions from the false reason for hate to the actual reason for hate, and this is where it gets more into the main argument of the essay. And then in the next paragraph, moving from general to specific, which is good. So starting by saying that you can go from deciding that you are being told you're not normal to a solution, moving from a generalization in the next paragraph about children being told to be normal, but then to another generalization. So here, where it says around 5th grade, children start to get vicious toward each other, it made me think maybe there's getting to be a little bit too many generalizations, and it could be more specific, like an example of what happened to this person themselves. And then here, you move from a generalization in this paragraph about children to what you would do to change this and make it better for other people. So it's like, I think we all mentioned, it's really raw and passionate, but based on generalization. So I think what I came away with, it was a good technique for me to look at each paragraph and summarize what was happening, because it made it visible to me that one of the issues with this draft is there are a lot of big generalizations that might not all be earned, in the sense that there's not enough detail to back them up. So that's what I saw just off the top, because you all are really good at just on the fly critique. Do you have anything that you saw with that breakdown of paragraph by paragraph? Like that was Brittany's reverse outline.
I don't like have a necessarily a critique for like that, but I just want to say, like, if someone was like looking to do that, you can be as specific as Professor Irvin was being, or you can also just like pick out like, this paragraph is about this paragraph is about like one word, even if you need to, if that like is intimidating to you, just to make sure you're like staying on topic. Sometimes people will just end up writing a paragraph about like multiple things, and if you can like just even pick out that and be like, oh no, like this isn't like centered on one topic, like that can also help. I mean, that's when the initial outline also helps, but if you didn't do that, like that's always great to do. So
right. So yeah, the writing process is kind of, it's recursive. You start with your list and your outline, and then you can still be listing and outlining after you have a draft. We call it a reverse outline because it's how you analyze. And like Kat was saying, in this particular essay, we didn't have the problem where there were too many topics in one paragraph. But sometimes that's a really common fault in your first draft, is that you'll have a paragraph that has multiple topics. And then, as Kat said, if you list everything that's in the paragraph, you'll see, wait, I put 3 topics in here. It really needs to be 3 paragraphs, or I need to edit out something. Hannah, you had some ideas about sharpening things up. Did you have anything you wanted to suggest as far as that goes?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I did see that there was a lot of generalizations. I think that sharpening up and making things more concise of what this individual is talking about, giving more clear, specific examples and relating things more directly to her passion and how it kind of involves the school or the university she may be applying to would be very helpful. But those would just be suggestions I would give.
Right. Specifics about the school and the university would be really good to add in there. So rather than big generalizations. Yeah, good. So that's kind of like, that's our presentation and our take on the process of writing an essay. And we just, we're open to any questions that people might have. So thank you, Alexis, for that nice compliment. But I don't know if there are other questions.
Well, as we're waiting for questions to come in, I want to thank you all. What a tremendous use of this time together to look through a real essay and give your feedback and really positive and critical critiques that are going to help make that paper better and to be really constructive. So thank you so much for being here. The Westchester Writing Center is just one of several options available to students who are looking for additional support, and any college will likely have this type of resource. So this is just one center that exists on Westchester's campus. And these are 3 students who are enrolled in classes and also working as student workers in these tutoring roles. And we're so lucky to have you here tonight to share this time with us. Seeing that there's no questions, I'm going to thank you again for your time. Dr. Irvin, this was fabulous. I'm sure that the folks that are on the call had a really good experience and are feeling ready and able to take on their college essays. So thank you so much all. I will be sending along the recording to this later as well, so you'll have that for your records.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having us.
Have a great night and a great spring break.
Oh, yes. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.